following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tosaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by OptionsXpress. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At OptionsXpress, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. OptionsXpress lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. OptionsXpress is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome to the Option Block, your bi-weekly source of options wit and wisdom. My name is Mark Longo from the optionsinsider.com, as well as the old Options Insider Radio Network. And I am joined today on the old Option Block All-Star panel by several regulars and one newcomer to the old program. Starting off with the man from the mountains, a.k.a. Uncle Mike from Know Your Options Inc., good old Mike Tosaw. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the show, sir.
Always happy to be here. Every day's a holiday. Every meal's a feast.
Things are quite good, it sounds like, in the Tosaw household. Every meal's a feast, huh? Even breakfast on Tuesday morning, that's a feast, sir?
Why wouldn't it be?
Is oatmeal count as a feast? I don't know.
No, I don't really like oatmeal, but...
All right, and we are also joined, speaking of feasts, by one Andrew Giovinazzi of Lobster Bib fame, a.k.a. Option Pit fame. Andrew, welcome back to the show as well, sir.
Thank you. I need to go down and get some coffee in a couple minutes. But yes, I got to put a bib on and get ready because the weekend is coming, and you know that just means tasty lobsters for all us Mainers.
Yes, nothing but lobsters in Maine. Nothing to do but eat lobsters in Maine. And last but certainly not least, we have a newcomer here holding down the OptionsXpress hot seat today. She is Anitra DuPart from OX. Anitra, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And since this is your first time on the show and the old network, why don't we take a couple of minutes for you to introduce yourself and give a quick background to our listeners?
Absolutely. Like our host said, my name is Anitra DuPart, representing OptionsXpress. I've been in the business since 1999, getting my start with TD Waterhouse. I've done things from financial consulting to sales, and now I'm with OptionsXpress / Charles Schwab. Loving every minute of it. Been here since 2009. Started off on the trade desk, and now I'm one of the managers on the trade desk. So it's been a really great experience helping customers and just getting into the whole options and stock market world. It's great.
So are you keeping Mr. Grigas in line over there?
Yes, that's right. I have to. As one of the few females around here, you have to keep him in check.
He definitely takes some keeping in check, I could say that. All right. And with our team assembled, we're going to dive right into the trading block.
The trading block.
And welcome to the trading block. This is, of course, the portion of the show where we discuss what's moving the old markets, what's lighting up the old tape today. And as is we are wont to discuss on the show recently, not a heck of a lot lighting up the old tape today. We're recording at an unusual time here, midday, noon here, central here in Chicago. So as of now, the markets are essentially unched on the day, pretty much up or down a tenth of a percentage point, except for the old NASDAQ up 0.4%. And I wonder why that is. What could possibly be carrying the NASDAQ to such
fruit
lofty?
Company, maybe?
Yeah, there's a fruit vendor out there. I hear they have a new recipe for fruit fly-less bananas, and they're lighting up the tape today, and they're really just moving the NASDAQ to extreme heights. Yeah, it's a weekday, so Apple has to be up at least 1%, right? Isn't that the rule?
Yeah, if that's not the case, they halt trading these days, don't they?
Yeah, they have to investigate to make sure their algorithms are working and in place, given the... So you must be another happy day. Are you considering rolling again? Are you short 6.5? Where are you short on the upside here, Uncle Mike?
650.
How did I know? We've been doing the show together too long when I know where your shorts are before you even say it.
That's scary.
Hey, is this all-time highville today?
Isn't every day a new all-time high for Apple? I've lost track.
Now you had a little chance there not very long ago to scoop it.
Yeah, the 5 half prints.
Below 600.
all one of them.
Yeah.
One manager in the world has got the call from their clients saying, "Why don't we own Apple?"
Yeah, I'd imagine that's a relatively daily occurrence right now. Why aren't we long Apple? Why are we short the 6.5? Why aren't we short 7.5 given everything that's going on out there?
Yeah, I've gotten that call.
How dare you short upside in Apple? What is wrong with you, sir?
Yeah.
So anything else you're watching in today's relatively quiet and genteel markets, Uncle Mike? Gold's up nearly 1% today too, so that might be keeping you active as well.
Yeah, it's not a lot of movement going on today, so it's if for some reason Apple does go up to 6.5 during this show, I will have to exit quickly and roll up calls. So just so the viewers know, or the listeners know.
And Andrew, we are seeing a creeping movement to the upside here in the old VIX cash. What have you been? Are you still heavily long upside ratios here in VIX? Nothing but upside for you in VIX.
Most of it, I still have we still have a small, actually short VXX position, which is rapidly eroding away. We had rolled those puts down forever and ever and ever. Overall, it's gone very well. This last little one, we're down a little bit of money on. But it's really weird. I'm not, I have no opinion right now on where this VXX is going. So I'm probably might close the balance of my puts right now. I just, I don't like the Spanish fly in the ointment. Let's just put it that way. And I don't think I've actually closed a couple longs today in several places.
Selling long premium. What's wrong with you, sir? You have a fever?
No, just so long. Any long deltas I had left, I've trimmed down about 50%. So I'm not. This is now all I did is, I think it ratchets up the strangeness just a little bit.
The worm has turned, Andrew. No longer the diehard bull. So perhaps bulls out there might want to.
I think long, sure, I am very. I am still pretty committed long-term bull, but the short-term stuff, it's definitely, I think the flavor's gotten a little different tasting right now. That's all I got to say.
Well, speaking of VXX, I saw an article about it yesterday, I believe it was actually in Market Beat over in the Wall Street Journal blogs, and it looked like it could have been ripped from one of our shows here discussing VXX and all the brouhaha therein. And it was called The Curious Case of VIX and VIX Products, and I wanted to highlight it just because it's not often that we see any sort of the general financial media picking up on these things that we've been saying for a long time on this show. And this article pretty much goes on to state exactly what we said on the show so many times. I'm glad to hear someone is finally listening, that talking about the brouhaha over Credit Suisse and their leveraged TVIX product and VXX, and how the inflow of funds into that is starting to cause a ripple effect back onto the VIX itself, which is exactly what we've been discussing on this show for ages. They mentioned that it could inflate the level of the VIX cash, which we talked about ad nauseum. We talked about how it could increase the term structure, which we talked about ad nauseum as well, and also making the the dynamic vol of VIX far greater than it probably should be. All things we've discussed here. I'm surprised this guy didn't give us a call, but then again, I don't know this particular reporter over the Journal. I know most of the options guys. This is not one of the options guys. So, but he's nice to see that the Journal is covering this, even though it is limited to the blogs. But still, someone out there is writing about what we've been discussing ad nauseum. Andrew or Mike or Anitra, do you have a chance to take a look at this article?
Actually, no. I'm just pulling it up. I find it, again, I find it interesting. A lot of one thing, TVIX net asset value, Mark was just talking about it today, has gone expensive again. Basically, it's trading over net asset value. People couldn't get enough of it before, so they figured now is the time to jump back in. I think, as far as the vol products go, some of the juice has come out of it, but the VIX again has come up. So, just from the recent lows around the 14 handle or so. But what's funny again is the TVIX is up 22 cents, but the VIX is up 26 cents.
Didn't these people pay attention to what happened over the past few weeks? Why would you jump in and pay over NAV again for TVIX?
It is a total piece of crap for a product,
and it makes no sense.
That.
You have no excuse at this point. You've seen this exact same thing play out already, and people get wiped out or severely damaged in the process, and you're jumping in and paying over NAV again. What's wrong with people? I don't understand.
Well, and the thing is I don't think the product really performs very well. I mean, I understand why people want to. I think it's easier to short the XIV than it is to buy that, because at least the XIV, it goes down when the volatility goes up, for sure. And that product at least works. Okay?
That's a resounding endorsement. That's a back-of-the-box quote from Andrew there. This product at least works.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not getting, it's one thing like with USO. I know we've talked about like UNG and USO, we've beaten them to death on this show, but at least like if you're doing something with USO, is that if you have the money, are you better off doing something with crude oil futures or the mini crude contract? Yeah, my opinion is yes, you are. But if it doesn't even match what you're doing, you're asking for trouble. And with what happened a couple of weeks ago, I'm with you. I don't understand why anyone would get into it.
Yeah, that's why.
They think they're buying the bottom. They think this is going to be an easy buy and they could very well be right to at some level, but I think they're actually kind of cruising for a bruising on this thing, because they're not really going to get they need to get some performance out of this, and it's probably I don't think it's the right. I still think it's going to have some broken issues. And I don't think Credit Suisse has really their hands around managing it on this size. I think it's become too big for them to
that was apparent when they shut it down the first time, that they had no clue how to manage this. And, Uncle Mike, you're right. That's why I wanted to point out this article, because, obviously in this show, we're kind of preaching to the choir here. Most of our listeners, I think, would have some handle on this, and not all of them, obviously, but a fair amount would have some handle on how these products work and when to stay away and when to dive in. But to see someone writing about this in any sort of mainstream financial publication like the Journal, even if it is buried on the blogs, that is at least a start, that someone else out there is starting to hear the message and starting to ask these same questions. Like I said, I asked these questions directly to the SIBO down at Boca a few weeks ago, and they all kind of shook their heads as if they didn't know what I was talking about. How could any other products possibly influence the VIX? And it's nice to see other people starting to beat this drum. Well, as we mentioned earlier, listeners, it's not exactly a super whoppingly busy day here on the street today. Anything else catching your guys' eyes before we close out the old trading block?
Yeah, my last comment is the market did not really rebound at all from yesterday. The vol didn't come in, the market didn't rebound. I think there's little tiny vol upticks here and there. So the market, there's no premium coming out of any vol products for the weekend. So
that is bizarre. You would think the weekend would start, especially on a day like today, would already be starting to be priced out. I mean, there is the quote-unquote number tomorrow, even though the market's closed, a bizarre scenario there. I'm not sure really how you take that into account. But so that could be perhaps one of the reasons why they haven't fully taken the weekend's premium out yet. But other than that, yeah, you think, especially by now, midday on Thursday with a quiet week, that they would already be hitting the premium across the board.
Right. Right. Oh, I agree. And they're not. So I take that as we're going to wait and see. And, the jobs number, it pretty much sounds like it's going to be in line anyway. So I don't think it matters anymore now that we're growing, now that Spain is on the block.
Yeah, something's lurking out there in the background, in the ether then, if even the market makers are afraid to start hitting bids going into a holiday weekend, because that's their bread and butter. That's what they do. So when they hold off on that, then something else is perhaps lurking that you may want to be prepared for.
It's hard for me to see how the vol is going to come in fast, which is not great for my VXX position, but it's a tiny one, so I can.
But hey, you're long all that upside, so you'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. And that is going to do it for the old trading block. And now we're going to dive right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the odd block.
All right, and welcome to the Odd Block. This is, of course, the portion of the show where we discuss the interesting and or the unusual and sometimes the downright dubious options activity that's lighting up the old street. And as you might have surmised from our opening segment here, there's not too much activity lighting up the old street ahead of this long holiday weekend. So we're actually going to start things off here in the Odd Block with a review of some activity we saw back earlier, actually last month. On March 8th, we were discussing, and keen-eared listeners will remember us discussing Carnival Cruise Lines and how, then going into expiration, a lot of bulls were piling into upside in CCL, expecting that that CCL has been beaten down, of course, since that Italian cruise ship wreck several months ago. And now a lot of bulls were piling in last month, betting that Carnival was due for a rebound. Well, now looking back with the power of hindsight on these bulls flocking into the upside in CCL, we saw first off 4,000 of the March 33s were picked up back on the 8th for a premium around 35 cents. Well, if you look at CCL, of course, we flirted. CCL flirted with that level around expiration, got close to 33, but never really crossed that mark. So even if you scalped some gamma aggressively, you didn't really have many opportunities to make that money back. So you might have salvaged some of that 35 cents, but for the most part, those call buyers, and those calls, I should say, went out worthless. We also saw some longer term plays out in the 834s. People picked up about 4,000 of these contracts for around 35 cents. Well, Carnival closed, or I should say, is trading today at $30.65. So as you can imagine, these 834s are not exactly juicy contracts. They're offered at a nickel right now, and the stock hasn't really merged or moved much beyond the 33 level, so you never really had a chance to close these guys out. In fact, there still is about 5,000 open interest on this strike, which shows that these bulls in the upside in CCL were probably a wee bit ahead of their time. It might be interesting to see if these guys try to roll, or can't really roll the 34s anymore. They're gone, but try their luck again, maybe in May or beyond up on the upside strike. And there are about 5,000 of the May 34s open as well, so maybe they have already rolled out to that strike over the past few weeks and are trying their luck again. But in any event, the bulls we highlighted last month in Carnival were not exactly on the right side of the trade. And then moving on to one of the few interesting trades that is going up today. It's going up in Wellcare Health Plans. This is ticker symbol WCG. This is the name that does about 600 contracts a day. So not exactly lighting up the old tape here in WCG every day. And today we're seeing something a little bit different. We're seeing about 12,000 contracts going up in WCG, so substantially more than the daily average volume here today. And what most of this went up in essentially two trades. We saw An interesting trade here first off, we saw someone coming in and selling 3,000 of the June 65s. So for $9.50, the stock actually is trading right now at $73.67. So these are substantially in the money calls. And if you look at the open interest here, the open interest on these June 65s is about 3,300 contracts, and we saw about 3,200 contracts going up today. So this is obviously a closing position of these calls. We also saw an opening trade on the June 60 puts, where it appears this trade went up below the market, so it's on a spread, so it's difficult to determine exactly what happened. But if you look at the implied vol on that strike, it got crushed, which implies that this was indeed a sale. We saw about 3,100 of these June 60 puts going up for $1.50 as well, so about the same number, about the same level. Looks like someone closed out a profitable deep in the money call position and then decided to maintain a bullish outlook on the stock and just roll to some short puts on the June 60s. At the exact same time, we also saw about 2,000 or so of this June 75-85 call spread going up. So the person picked it up for about $3.10 net on the spread. So it actually looks like he closed out his profitable June 65s, decided to maintain a bullish outlook, go for something a little bit more reasonable, and picking up some 75-85 call spread instead, and then turns around and finances it with a sale of these June 60 puts. So a very interesting spread. Andrew, have you had a chance to look at WCG at all?
Oh, yeah, I have my little pet theories on the healthcare thing. So I think if Obamacare gets repealed, then maybe we have the healthcare industry stops becoming a utility, and maybe it has some, growth in earnings, and a little funk can come back into it. So I'm looking at all these little stocks because I think they do look a little, I think there's some upside could actually start to happen because I think there's going to be spill out. There is probably going to be some sort of growth of insurance and all this kind of stuff if the healthcare thing, fails, because maybe the states start taking more active interest in it. It becomes a little more privatized, which is probably, I think it's good for all these companies down the road. And I think that's part of what this bet, it certainly feels like.
So just to be technical,
is really moving out.
Yeah, this one's rolling.
Stocks up like $10.
So just to clarify then for our listeners and get down to the technical nitty gritty, when you see the funk in a name, do you have to do stuff with the funk? How do you trade that?
Exactly.
Do stuff with the funk. Is that our takeaway from
when
WCG?
I describe funk is I say that when things get a little funky, the implied volatilities are coming up. Right now they're kind of at record lows or 2-year lows for a lot of the healthcare industry. I think that's a result of sort of the weight of this big healthcare mandate that came down. Now all of a sudden things are getting funky again. There's a little more volatility. The names are starting to move, and they're starting to move up pretty hard. And I think that's what this particular guy is looking at here. And I can't disagree with that. So I have little tiny long healthcare positions myself, and they have a very long time span, like 3 to 6 months.
This guy's certainly a courageous fellow. He's putting on some size in a name that does no size whatsoever. So you look at all the strikes that he's playing on, and it's just him.
He's basically planning on the guy that he bought this spread from. He gets to sell it back to it from.
Exactly.
WCG is $10 higher.
Exactly. There's not much you can do in the interim with this spread. You put it on, you hope you can close it out someday. In the interim, there's really you're limited in these kind of low float names. This is the name that also does about 300,000 shares a day. So he also probably is looking for some liquidity in the options that may or may not be available in the underlying. Of course, doing 600 contracts a day, I'm guessing not too much liquidity here in the options for WCG as well.
Somebody just took this down. This is the classic. Somebody's taking the other side. It's a large customer, and they want to make them happy. So
Mike C isn't on the show today. Maybe the boys at SCG were busy putting up about 10,000 contracts in WCG this morning. We'll leave that out there for the conspiracy theorists.
Stuff on the healthcare front, to be honest. I'm talking up what I have a little bit, but it's not big enough yet for me to get super excited. But it is interesting to see some of the volatility coming back into these.
Hey, CNBC built an empire on talking up what you have, so might as well follow suit, right? All right. And with that little shot...
Though I actually do. I think they're buying. They can't get a position for much cheaper than what they got it for.
All right. And with that little shot, we're going to close out the old odd block and roll right into the Xpress Block.
The Xpress Block, brought to you by OptionsXpress. OptionsXpress lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, OptionsXpress is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, OptionsXpress allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. OptionsXpress is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and that rockin' theme means it's time for the Xpress Block. And this is normally the portion of the show when John or Tim would take the reins and I get to sit back and have a nice, tasty beverage and relax my vocal cords. But today, Anitra is gamely diving into the hot seat. So, Anitra, what do you have in store for us today, madam?
Well, today I kind of wanted to touch on what our OptionsXpress customers are kind of doing, what's been going on with the news in relation to how they're trading today. Today, what we've been kind of discussing with a lot of the customers, obviously with the stocks being down for its third session, we were hoping, a lot of customers were kind of hoping maybe for a little bounce today with the good news about the jobless claims. They did come out slightly better than expected, which was really good. I have a lot of customers trading Apple and Google who have some call options, their long call options in Google and Apple for this week. So they were really hoping for a little bit of a bounce there. But I think that a lot of the worries are out there still about Europe's ability to stem its debt crisis. So I think that has had a little bit more of an impact.
Well, Apple
on trading.
The rally is continuing in Apple as we speak. Is up about 1.5% now, or about 8 points on the day today. So your Apple bulls, your Apple call buyers, a little bit now. Yeah, your Apple call buyers should be somewhat happy.
Yeah, well, that's good to know that Apple is turning around a little bit, coming back up. That'll be good news for our customers as they really, really love to trade Apple and Google, and they're pretty bullish when it comes to those type of options. Also, what we've noticed this week, with it being a short week, there has been lighter volume this week, with the short week for tomorrow being Good Friday. And interesting enough, a lot of customers didn't even realize that the market was closed tomorrow. So I had to do a lot of reminding of that, and they were really appreciative of that as well. Also, I've seen a little more trading today in BBY. They came out with their earnings yesterday, so they were up in after hours and up in pre-market today.
What do the OX customers think of BBY? Are they bulls? Are they bears? Are they getting long premium? What are they doing out there?
They were pretty bullish. I had some customers who went long some calls and short some puts on it. They were pretty much predicting that they would come out with good earnings, which they did. Their profit was up over 32%. They reported revenue of like $2.73 billion, which was well ahead of street estimates. So that was pretty good for them. Last time I checked, it may have been kind of flat or a little bit down, but overall it seemed like it did pretty much what they were expecting it to do so far. So that was good.
All right, and we had a bit of an audio hiccup with poor Anitra there, so the Xpress Block was cut off a bit prematurely. We're hoping to get her back on for the end of the show, but without further ado, we're going to dive right into the Strategy Block.
The Strategy Block.
All right, and that tune means it's time once again for Uncle Mike's Rant of the Week, a.k.a. the Strategy Block. And a little birdie told me, Uncle Mike, before the show, that something might have you a wee bit fired up. What might that be, sir?
It amazes me. I got to hire your birdies someday. They're always just so
My
accurate.
birdie network, it's quite underestimated out there. They know the scoop.
Yeah, they do. But anyway, folks, today's not about an option strategy. I just want to share some stories of some conversations that I've had. 3 of the conversations I've had today, and a couple of them I've just had over the last month or two. And it just really kind of got me wound up a little bit. Person 1 is somebody who, persons 1 and 2, we'll say, are 2 guys that got money embezzled from them through Ponzi schemes, through just people stealing money from them. Both situations and the conversations that I've had, they did reasonable due diligence, and they just got a lot of money, upwards of several $1 million between the 2 of them, stolen from them. There's no bones about it, because I was asking them, well, how did you check on this person? Did you do this, that, or the other? And the answer is yes. And the first point that I want to make is that even Bernie Madoff, he followed all the rules. He had a clean record. He was just that intelligent of a thief. And there has to be trust involved whenever you're working with a business partner, a financial planner, or anyone for that matter. So that's just the first message that I want to say for today, is really make sure that you trust the people with whom you're working with. And I rest very easy at night knowing that where my money is located at, in an optionsXpress account, all mine and my family's money, but besides our checking accounts and things like that, it's all in optionsXpress, and I rest very easy because I trust the people there. I know the people there. I have a strong level of familiarity with the people at optionsXpress and Brokers Express. So I think lesson 1 of what I want to emphasize today, trust is a key word. Now, with that, today I had a couple of conversations that really kind of got me even more wound up. The first one was with a gentleman who is 62 years old, doesn't really have any savings, and he's trying to figure out a way to work part-time to where he can still get Social Security, because if you make more than, I believe it's $14,000 a year in earned income, you have to give back some of your Social Security. And I went through everything with him just as kind of a favor to him. And so he's in a rough spot right now because there's not a lot of savings there, and he's up a creek. He needs the money, and he's never going to be able to retire. Now, another person that I met with today is someone who recently got laid off from a very large corporation, and he's looking to start another career. And so he's just asking me questions about basic financial vehicles and things like that. And he's 40, and he's in a bad situation in that there's not a lot of hiring going on right now. Now, granted, I didn't really get into it too much with him, but I'm sure he lives a very modest lifestyle, and I'm sure he has some savings built up. But what's the lesson that I want to give for today? And actually, the third person that I talked to today is actually just became a client, and he's someone, he has a trust, he has a corporation, and from what I can tell, he's not doing too bad with his trading account. So the lesson that I want to really push out today is the importance of financial education, how you have to go the extra mile with this. Now, Andrew doesn't really talk a lot about the importance of a Roth IRA versus a traditional and things like that, but I'm willing to bet just the fact that he's been around the game so much, he's going to have a reasonable amount of intelligence on that subject. Successful people typically do, folks, and you need to go the extra mile and have financial education. The one person who's 62, well, what's the lesson in that? Well, should he have saved more money? Maybe, but in all likelihood, maybe he would have thrown it away buying something. Who knows? My point is this. You need to have financial education. When I was in high school, I could have told you what a sine, a cosine, and a tangent is. I knew the periodic table. I knew all sorts of things like that. I didn't even know how to spell IRA when I was in high school. I graduated with a degree in business from an accredited business school. However, I didn't know what the heck an option was until I actually traded one. My point is this, you're not going to learn true financial education unless you seek it out yourself. It is a constant battle. And with that, there's a lot. I've been in this business for many years, and there's a lot of things that I don't know, and I constantly try to educate myself all the time. And the fact that you're listening to this show, folks, I think it's a wonderful thing. We're happy to have you by all means, and I love what goes on this show, but it's not just about options. You've got to take it to the next level and really have a good financial education for yourself. Understand how the tax man's going to get you. And if you don't understand that, learn it. hire someone who does. It's you against them, and by them, I mean the rest of the world. You need to have an understanding. You need to have an education as to what's going on, because the situations that I've seen in these last couple months, I'm willing to bet they're very common throughout America. And if you just want to get a job and let someone else worry about your pension, then you might run into a problem. If you don't save money and you don't have any money in retirement, you might have some problems. If you have money and you don't know what to do with it, you're going to have some problems. So the message for today, and one to grow on: read every book that you possibly can on financial education and become educated. That is all.
So head on down to your local Y and take the local Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar. That's what you're telling our listeners?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, I like Bob Kiyosaki. I've never bought any of his programs, and I don't know anything about. I think he's doing something with options now, but I don't know a lot about him. I've read a couple of his books, but what's good about what Bob Kiyosaki does is he emphasizes financial education. What could have prevented these things from happening? Financial education.
All right, and thank you for that, Uncle Mike. And now we're going to dive right into Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and those traffic sounds, those horns mean it's time once again for Around the Block, the portion of the show where we discuss what we're watching for the next few sessions going into the long weekend. And we're going to kick things off with good old Uncle Mike Tosaw from Know Your Options Inc. Uncle Mike, what are you watching going into this great holiday weekend?
I'm watching the Easter egg hunt that we're hosting tomorrow in our neighborhood. Excited about that. But
on Friday?
I'm sorry. This is gonna be broadcast on Friday,
yeah,
so it's
gonna
be on Saturday. So.
Saturday, okay.
That's how we professional show business.
Our time change has thrown me for a loop, sir.
So excited about the big Easter egg hunt coming up in our neighborhood, but I think Apple looking to make new all-time highs. That's something I'm definitely going to have my eye on. Gold's getting a little bit on the lower end. It's up today, but we got to be careful. Once we get GLD in the 150s, you got to keep a close eye on it. Just the usual suspects for me.
The usual suspects indeed. All right, thank you for that. And Andrew, we discussed earlier on the show the strange phenomenon that as of right now, as our recording time, which is almost 1 o'clock Central now, the weekend has yet to come out of these options here, which, as you and I both know from having been degenerate premium sellers on the floor, or just market makers, same thing. You start hitting that weekend as soon as you possibly have a chance. So the fact that it is not out yet, I'd have to wager some of it has to do with the fact that we have this weird number on a day when the market is closed, so people might be a little more hesitant to lower their bids as a result of that. But also there could be something else hanging around out there. Is that your takeaway as well?
Yep, I think we have officially put the European kibosh on. It's not in as big a way, but now I think it's a little bit of an issue again. I think mentally I'm kind of preparing for that again.
Well, now we have Spain on the hot seat. It just moves from one country to the next. It's the endless Euro crisis. It just changes borders.
And in reality, everybody knew this was. I'm not going to say everybody knew it was happening, but they. But I think really in reality, it's okay if the Eurozone slows down and relevers down. It has to be done. So they have no growth. They have negative growth for a couple of years. Why people, when you go to Europe, look at all those guys sitting around, right? I mean, how many times you go to Italy, you go to Spain, you got all these guys in nice suits hanging out drinking coffee. Well, it's because they're getting money for free and living at home. I mean, they all got to go get a job. Like everybody else.
That is one of the more interesting things about if you travel around Italy or Spain or any of these other areas where it's almost intoxicating, the lifestyle. And part of that is, of course, the food and the wine, and also the fact that everyone seems to be out and about at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday at the cafe sipping espresso. And you have to say to yourself, who is working here? And, it's an intoxicating life on one hand. The other hand, from a productivity standpoint, it's not exactly the most efficient lifestyle, shall we say?
No,
so
it is not.
So here we are, as we're offending all of our Southern and Western European listeners by essentially calling them all lazy. But
well, there's a percentage of the population I think that has to just get off the dole, and that's the reality. And those are the people breaking the windows. The people the people that own the shops and have to work in the shops aren't breaking the windows. It's all the lazy people that don't want to have to go back to work.
Still, you have to be impressed with any culture that mandates a siesta in the afternoon. I think we could use a little bit of that here in the States. And a mandatory 1 hour break when all the shops are closed and you can't do business. You just get to go home and relax and perhaps sleep a little bit. That's.
I think that's yes. I think that's okay to do. They still work, but I think it's a lot more. I think there's people taking a siesta on top of their siesta. I think that's the problem. The one siesta in the middle of the day is okay. It's the never working at all is probably, I think, part of the issue.
Right. Before we dig our hole any deeper, you said you're cutting short all of your long deltas. Are you pretty much just flattening out across the board here for most of your positions and just kind of wait and see?
I've trimmed stuff today. Anything has to be spread off. I have a couple of small long delta positions, but they're relatively but even small ones are kind of expensive, it feels like. So, I got a little tiny ones. I still like the healthcare thing, but I've scaled. I was scaling into it, and I'm going to stop and see where just things shake out. I think we could, again, now we have Europe has to deal with what are they going to do with the Spanish. So, and I think that is not going away. We had a pretty decent rally on what I think are probably the good economic fundamentals of the other, 3/4 of the planet, right? You've got Asia Pacific, the United States, and Europe is about, one chunk. The U.S. is basically a third. Asia is a third or more, and you got Europe. And then, Latin America. So 3/4 of the planet, maybe 80% of the planet is doing okay. And you've got 20% of the planet in the Eurozone that have to get their act together. And I assume that the United States will stop borrowing money at some point.
That's quite the assumption.
And the market is definitely does not like this. It's almost like where's the easy trade here? Do you go back and you start looking at the XLF or a trade that really gets you some? What I really want here is some relatively quick gamma. Do you buy some puts in the XLF? Something fairly simple like that, kind of hedge everything else. Or you could always sell some more European banks. But something with a little leverage like that. I think the volatility here is still 21 vol for the XLF. I'm just looking at it now. Just, I think it's okay if you're long some deltas in other places to, maybe start thinking about what can happen outside of, because reality is the European financial crisis the last time was the biggest surprise. The only difference now is the volatility in the VIX is still pretty high. It's about as high as it was during the financial crisis or during our current one. We're looking at around 80, 90 volatility or more in the VIX options. They're pretty high. They're definitely pricing some moves in that thing. So, if they can handle the Spanish deal, it's all for naught, and then we probably rally pretty hard again. And I think that money that sits on the sidelines just slowly comes back in.
Given the fact that we haven't seen the weekend come out yet, this is a little bit pricier proposition to pick up some gamma going into the weekend than it typically is. Usually you can scoop some pretty good deals. Usually you have people essentially discounting you into Monday and sometimes even Tuesday, so you could essentially pick up some free weekend gamma. But in this case, looks like that's not the case. So you're going to have to actually pay that decay, whether it comes out on Monday or whatever the case may be, to actually hedge your risk over the weekend. And as we've all seen over the past year or so, a lot of things can happen over a weekend, particularly a long weekend. And so it might make some sense to have some near-term gamma to defend against that.
Yeah, I just think right now the buyers are stepping back. That's more than people coming out and actively whacking stuff.
All right, thank you for that, Andrew. And unfortunately, we were unable to reconnect with Anitra, the Skype gods, the Wi-Fi gods over there at OX, or whatever the case may be. They all conspired against us, so she was cut short in the middle of her option block debut. But don't worry, listeners, we'll bring her back soon enough. So that is going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. And before we go, I do want to mention to all of our listeners, too, I know many of you have requested that we add some Stitcher functionality so you can listen to the show streaming or download via Stitcher.com. Well, now you can do that. We just became content partners with Stitcher. So if you go to Stitcher.com, or if you surf over to, or if you download, I should say, the Stitcher mobile app on your smartphone or mobile device, you can now access the Option Block as well as the entirety of the Options Insider Radio Network from the Stitcher system. So that's yet another way that you can listen to our fine show. And starting off with Uncle Mike, what do you have coming up that may interest and or intrigue our listeners?
On April 12th at noon Central Time, I'll be doing a webinar on spread trading. I'll talk a little bit about how we use them at Know Your Options, talk a little bit about the basics of it. The webinar is entitled Spread Trading for Sophomores, so make sure you stop on by. I'll be a guest speaker on the OptionsXpress web platform, so for more information on that, go to the OptionsXpress website and click on the Educate tab.
All right, thank you for that. And Andrew, what do you have coming up over in the land of the pit, a.k.a. Lobster Bib, a.k.a. Slinky.com, that may intrigue our audience?
We're going to have an all-day meet and trading seminar in June. That's the big thing we're aiming for right now. Of course, we have our weekly or our monthly free seminars that we put on at Option Pit. And that's, I think the weekend of June 14th to the 16th, look for that on our website. And we will be pointing people toward that trading seminar for a lot of our clients, probably see the Cubs, rent a roof, have a grand old time. So, and there will be some trading involved as well. So that's our next big look going forward.
And did my little birdie, your network, did they mention to me that you might also be doing some upgrades to the old Option Pit website too?
We are doing a massive overhaul of our website to make it more accessible to people, to make all the trainings easier, just in general, make everything easier, better, and smoother to use. So, yes, you're that little birdie that is so...
he's clued in.
For you. Yes.
Well, as someone who has just undergone a massive redesign and is in the process of doing more, I can only say Godspeed to you, sir, and I wish you the best, because it's a horribly painful process. It's like having your taxes done and your teeth pulled and going to confession all at the same time. It's just unpleasant, and also moving.
It ain't easy.
No, it's not fun. So I wish you guys all the best on that. And, of course, Anitra couldn't make it back onto the show, but she did ask me to plug the upcoming OptionsXpress educational seminar on Saturday, April 14th at the Hyatt Lodge on the McDonald's campus here in the Chicagoland area. So by all means, if you are local or you're going to be in the Chicagoland area on the 14th, then head on over to that free educational event. You can find out more about it on optionsexpress.com. Just click on the educational seminar or click on the education tab and you can find out more about it there. And that is going to do it for this episode. We, of course, want to thank all of you out there for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program and making it such a success. And we'll see you next time right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.